We're joined today by Tori Bogosian. We started a conversation with her more about diagnosis in her family, but today, really what I wanted to talk to you today, Tori, is about the effect on your family and quite how it strengthens your family. And could you tell me just a little bit about the early years? And I know you had him right around 2 years after your first child.
I think initially we were just so devastated. You end up really isolated because you realize things like the child's birthday parties, some of these events where all of the families and friends get together are very loud, festive occasions are really some of the worst scenarios for these kids with autism. I remember once we had a birthday and just the singing very loud off key just set them over the edge. And so you want to protect your child. You don't want to, ignore the needs of all the rest of the family. So it becomes this incredible balancing act. So here's a wonderful event like a birthday party that we're almost on the edge of maybe not going to, or what we would end up doing is coming for 20 minutes, one of us taking little Zari away so that the other kids could have a good time. So initially, I think I just felt so isolated and very, it was a difficult thing to communicate. So whereas other women are sitting down talking how busy they are running their kids to soccer, trying to get everything scheduled, how difficult homework can be, I was just wishing he could play soccer. Or I kept thinking, I wonder what his homework's going to be like. So I think initially it's a very sort of lonely, isolated feeling.
And how were you able to reach out? Was your husband, we men aren't the greatest with emotions. Certainly we have them, but we're not the best with them.
Well, I know it's no surprise to you. I think it's difficult for families. And you either, I know a lot of families that have been broken apart from it. But in my case, I think we became stronger and it was actually a better situation. But the way you handle it is you just kind of go day to day. And the good news is that he actually gets better so that we could become more social. And I remember one of the first times we started training him to go to a restaurant as he got older, we were all very tense and very nervous, and we're in this restaurant. And mind you, there's like 16 of us because we have a relatively large family. We're in this booth, and this waitress is brand new, and we go in at 3 p.m. when the place is empty. So we're sitting there, he placed his order, he ordered on his own, we all were ready to eat. And this poor girl was moving this tray of glasses and she dropped it and made this shattering noise throughout the restaurant. And Zari stood up and goes, "That's it, you're fired." And it broke the ice and everybody relaxed, from that poor girl who broke those glasses to the whole family. Just, it was symbolic. I mean, it just broke the tension. And we were suddenly able to sit there, and something so simple as going out to dinner, something you probably take for granted, just meant so much to us. And after that, we would start, writing it into his routine and scheduling it, and little by little, we could go at 4 p.m. or a busier time.
Well, Tori, thank you so much for sharing your experience, both as a family and a mother, and on behalf of Get Moving TV, I really appreciate the services that the schools have undertaken. I appreciate the courage of the families, but also that we have partners for families, that we have resources for families. At Ventura, we are moving, but we just need to keep moving and get these services moving. My next guest is here as both dad and a doctor too. Dr. Rick Sletton. Rick, you and I have talked a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. You've heard Tori talk about what happened with her family. Tell us a little bit about what happened with your family, your experiences.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I am sort of the Dr. Dad and I'm sort of the reluctant expert in being an autistic parent and someone in the medical community now. So I think it's been a long sort of 4 years. My son is 5 years old. He was our first son, obviously very special. And he came out and everything was normal. Probably a pretty happy kid, at least as a baby, sleeping, breastfed. And about 2 months, he started being very colicky. and we thought, okay, colicky kid, we'll do all the things that we know that we learned in our Good Family Practice residency to do for him. And this kind of persisted, and it kept going, and his stools were just this sort of almost like an acid, constant diarrhea, 6 to 10 diapers a day, and my poor wife was taking him into the doctor and talking about this, and mostly it was a question of adding more Desitin, and hopefully he'll sort of grow out of this colickiness. And then we noticed at about a year or so, maybe about a year to 13 months, he sort of stopped developing. And what 4 words that he had disappeared, and what connection that he had to us started sort of fading away. And we brought that up to our doctor, and our doctor said, and I wasn't at this appointment, but he said, no, we thought, well, does he have autism? And it was sort of coming up in some of the moms groups that my wife was in, and he said, no, that he can't have autism, he just played peekaboo with me, which he could do on occasion. So we let it go a little bit, but then Thanksgiving 2003 fell apart, and what we had was a child that was spinning, that was staring up at the ceiling, that was flapping his hands, and he was basically, we thought he'd left us, and we didn't know what to do. And at that point, I called you, I called anybody that I knew that might know anything about this, and we got an evaluation, and it was basically a diagnosis of autism. And so there we had it, we had this diagnosis of autism. And then what do you do? Well, one of the things that Noah always had was a really tough gut, and one of his problems was not only could he not communicate that pain to us, he wasn't communicating what he wanted either, and there was this lack of connection. And I think that's what is hurtful most to us as parents, is that we had this child who was in pain, and he couldn't really connect with us about that, whereas some kids might. And I think we connected with the head of pediatric gastroenterology at UCLA, and he gave us a very eloquent workup for celiac disease, which he didn't have. And we weren't getting many answers really from the mainstream medical community about what we could do about this besides hook him into Tri-Counties Regional, which we did, and we got phenomenal help from the Early Start program through Ventura Unified School District, and these people started coming out to our home, and it was just really great support. There was some occupational therapy. He had sort of lost some of his gross motor coordination that he had before, and we played basketball together, and that's one of my favorite things, and I have a great photo of him taking a ball and putting it in the basket at a year old, and he just stopped doing these things. And that was, I can take that, I guess, but it's the talking and the communication that was so deficient there and so worrisome to us. And we decided to go, like most parents do, go on the web and see what we could find out. And we found one website that was the Autism Research Institute, and we sort of threw out there what people were doing. There were some concerns about the MMR, which is still very controversial, but I said, well, if he really is autistic, we're not sure, let's just hold it. Because I couldn't live with myself if something came up later that it was implicated. And so we held that, and we found that some people were doing some things with diets, and so we said, what can it hurt to take them off milk? What can it hurt to take them off gluten, which is the protein that's really in all wheat and rye and barley and all those good things in the center section of Vons, basically. And what happened was he started looking at us again. He started smiling. And at the age of about 21 months, he had the first formed stool of his life. And that was impressive to us. And he was happier. He was sleeping better. So I think we were on to something. So for pretty much his second birthday, I traveled to Washington, D.C. to attend this conference. And I thought, well, I don't want to get into something that's sort of strange. I mean, why isn't this known in my medical community? But when I got there, I found lots of physicians there that were from very prominent places, like Dr. Jane Eldar, who's the chief of pediatric immunology at Tulane, who I spoke with personally about my son, because I just pushed my way to the front and